Hello, and welcome to Monumental, where we sit down with entrepreneurs, leaders, visionaries, and big thinkers making monumental change. Here's your host, Evan Holiday.
Welcome to Monumental. I'm your host, Evan Holiday, and today we have on the show with us Cole Hatter. Cole, great to have you on the show, man. How you doing?
Great, Evan. How you doing, bro? Haven't seen you since, what was that, last month in Orlando. It was cool hanging with you, bro.
I know. I was going to bring that up. I mean, it was great to meet you in person at Jake and Gino's Multifamily Mastery. I'm really excited to kind of dive into, your why behind multifamily and how that's helped benefit you.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah. Let's go.
Let's do it. So a little bit about Cole before we get started. Cole is a serial entrepreneur, author, award-winning speaker, real estate multifamily investor. He started the Thrive Conference, where he brings in the biggest names together and talking about more than just making money, but making money matter. He's taught tens of thousands of people to be more than just alive, but to become the best versions of themselves, creating massive profits and then impacting others by living a life of significance. And Cole, I told you right before we jumped on here that, that's really that is the embodiment of Monumental. That's the purpose behind the podcast. So I love what you're doing. I'm really excited. And let's just kind of jump right into your background and where you got started.
Sure. So my journey to real estate's different than most. I actually never thought about doing real estate. It was never on my radar. God put it on my heart to want to help people early, probably, 13, 14 years old is when you start actually considering, hey, I'm not old, but I need to start thinking about what I'll do someday when I get old, right? And for me, again, it was wanting to help people. So I thought about the various career options available to where I'd get compensated to make an impact to people's lives, like joining our military, being a doctor, being a police officer. And for me, actually, firefighting is what made the most sense. I decided to, while still in high school, actually, I was taking evening classes and weekend classes at my local junior college to take care of all my prerequisites so that the day I graduated high school, I was already qualified to start my academy to give me an edge over my competition, if you would. And it worked. I ended up landing my career, dream, 19 years old, working with the department and had a bright future ahead of me. And then I got in a really bad car accident where I was actually ejected from the car. So it wasn't just a bad accident. I got flown out of the car going like 80 miles an hour. They guessed or estimated. So if you want to say guessed and estimated, you can just say guested, by the way. But they were estimating our speed was around 80, they guess. And so obviously it goes without saying I was very injured. They actually had to close the freeway in both directions and land a helicopter to pick me up because hitting the pavement at speeds, like that, I was incredibly injured. I had a traumatic brain injury. I had swelling in my spinal column. So I was temporarily paralyzed from the waist down. They didn't actually even know if I would survive because of the brain swelling. There's this, about 48-hour window that's incredibly critical for brain injury patients that if you survive, then your chances of recovery and survival are way higher. But there's that really dim window of those first few days. And so obviously here I am today. I survived, but I had to learn how to walk again. I was in a wheelchair for a while. And it took about a year of going from a wheelchair to crutches to a cane to being able to walk, uninhibited, unassisted. And in that downtime, I had to pick a new career because although I had a high probability of full recovery, we didn't know how long it would take. And you can't be a firefighter without being in perfect physical health. So that's when for the first time ever, I realized early, like right after the accident, dude, I might not ever even get out of a wheelchair. It looks like I could, but maybe not. And so I need to, for the first time ever, really consider how I'm going to support myself all by myself. I don't know who would hire somebody in a wheelchair. Like what career limitations are there? And so I started thinking about all this stuff. And of course I was 21 at the time. I don't think I said that. And still at that age, the advice from parents, friends, and distant relatives was go back to school, Cole, and get your degree. Because although I did everything I needed to do to become a firefighter, I didn't go through the traditional route of getting a 4-year degree. I think I had like 42 credits and I needed 60. I just did what I needed for firefighting, right? So Cole, go back to school for 18 months, get that degree, go get a job sitting at a desk in corporate America. You can do that from a wheelchair. But although the corporate fit is good for some, it wasn't what I ever wanted to do. So I thought to myself, how can I financially support myself all by myself. And as I was recovering, and I was as part of my rehab, I would have to do like walks 3 or 4 times a day for 90 minutes to like train my legs outside the physical therapy office, just in circles at my parents' cul-de-sac. I actually forgot to mention that. Probably goes without saying that I was so injured afterwards I couldn't care for myself, so I had to move back in with my parents. So here I was, this firefighter living on my own, independence, living my career, my dream job, and back home with mom and dad being spoon-fed and carried to the toilet immediately after that accident. So a few months later, as I'm making my rounds in their cul-de-sac with my little walker, getting my legs strong, the neighbor's house was beautiful. My parents live in a great affluent area of Orange County at this time, still do actually. Same house. And the neighbors were real estate people. And so I asked the wife one day, like, what do you guys do? And she explained that she was an agent and her husband was an investor. And I looked at their lifestyle, and yeah, they had the cars and the big house and stuff, but they had freedom. They were always around. My parents would leave in the morning and they wouldn't come back till dinner time. They were in and out of their house all day. 2:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, she's out there playing baseball with their kids. So I just saw a level of freedom that none of the other neighbors had. And that was where it clicked for me that, if I wanted to be financially independent, real estate's probably the vehicle for me, because I could figure out how to do that in a way that I would be able to pay for myself. And regardless of any physical limitations, I could do that. So I first became a residential real estate agent. I went and got my real estate license and thought that I would be Johnny Realtor, listing homes on the weekends, doing open houses, and I accidentally ended up in a workshop very much like the one I just saw you in. It was a 2-day real estate training. And by the way, for those of you watching the video, yes, my nails are painted. That's my 3-year-old. So I haven't had a chance to
Nice.
take those nail polish off. Before people start wondering, if you're listening to the audio, don't worry about it. But if you're catching any video, yes, I have a 3- and 6-year-old daughter, and painting my nails is a regular occurrence in this house. So back to the story. I'm seeing myself in the video with my green nail polish flashing around. I don't know if you caught that yet, but so I end up at a 2-day workshop, very much like the one I just saw you in. And I assumed that anybody that did real estate did the same thing. So being a brand new realtor, I thought I was going to learn how to be an even better realtor. I accidentally ended up in actually a real estate investor training. And so started learning very quickly that there's a difference between earning commissions and earning profits. And I realized that even if I started listing multi-million-dollar homes, my income would be limited on that 2.5-3% commission on whatever it sold for. Where if I was the investor, my income limitations would be limitless. And so I decided right then to no longer be an investor. And I started fix and flipping homes, and I was exclusively making money in residential. And then eventually my career transitioned into the multifamily arena. And that's what I still do to this day. So I started an actual real estate investment business in 2005. My car accident was 2004. Started my real estate business 2005, and I've owned it and have ran it ever since. So I now own a handful of businesses, but my real estate investment company is the one I started first, and obviously the one I've owned the longest. And my dad, who we affectionately refer to as Big Sexy, is my business partner in my real estate investment company. And he and I, for about 15 years now, it'll be 15 years this June, have been out there crushing it in real estate. And so that's kind of the Cliff Note version of a 15-year journey. Now, of course, there's the ups and downs. There was the recession in there, and we can get into any of those details you're interested in talking about. But that's how I found real estate, was just out of necessity. Yeah. And then I guess I should finish the thought of why I never went back to firefighting is I wanted flexibility of schedule. Obviously, firefighting does that. And I wanted to help people. And what I found by being an entrepreneur is I have way more flexibility and way more ability of helping way more people. So although I love the brotherhood and the fire department and all of that, I'm still able to scratch that itch of being able to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, how I want, and be able to help people at an even greater scale by running my own real estate investment business and not being a firefighter for, local cities, et cetera. So that's where I'm at still today.
I love it, man. And I could not resonate more with that. I mean, what you described of, exactly what you finished with of, the reason why you got into real estate over firefighting is because you knew you could have limitless impact with what you're doing. And also the profits that you're generating, you can then give those back to purposes that you really stand behind and you believe in. Right. I went on that same path myself, basically going down pre-med and being like, wait a second, I hate science. I hate chemistry. Why am I doing this? And that's when I found real estate. And it's the same thing for me. It is powerful. But I want to go like all the way back toward the beginning when you got injured. What was that like? Like as far as, I think a lot of people find themselves in difficult situations or very difficult situations, whether it be physical, mental, or economic. How were you able to break through that and say, hey, this is, I can become bigger than this. I can get myself out of this through real estate.
So that's like the most significant realization in my life. And I would say one of, right, at least the top three I could think of, other than choosing my wife and my faith. And so I got in a very dark spot. So what I didn't say is that was the car accident that ended my firefighting career. I was in a second accident 66 days later. And what I didn't get into is in both accidents, I was the only survivor. So I was in two life-altering accidents 66 days apart from each other, where in both accidents, my best friends passed. Steve, who I'd grown up with, I lost in the car accident. And Matt, who was a best friend of mine, I lost in the second accident, which is actually a dirt biking accident. We fell into a mine shaft, and that's an hour-long podcast in and of itself. So we'll skip the details of that story. But I ended up in a very dark place, bro, where I was a total victim. I was like, why does this keep happening to me? I'm a good person. I'm a firefighter. I tithe at church. I'm loyal to my girlfriend at the time. Like, why is the world or God or the universe or whatever you want to call it going out of its way to like ruin me and kill everybody I love? And so I had this, woe is me thing. And it lasted until December 18th. So I lost Steve on September 10th. I lost Matt on November 14th, 66 days later. And then I went into this self-pity mode where, drinking and just being an idiot for about 30 days. And then on December 18th, realized that by being a victim and feeling sorry for myself, I would throw my life away. And I'm trying to be as Cliff Note version as possible. But another important factor was I was prescribed heavy pain meds like morphine and Oxycontin or whatever it was after my car accident because I was so injured, and they way overprescribed. And when the pain went away, I stopped taking them, but I still had several bottles of like a ton of pills left over. And after losing Matt, I was like, screw it. So I started taking pills and drinking alcohol because I was not trying to commit suicide, but I figured out that I could make myself fall asleep at like 4:00 in the afternoon and not wake up until like 11 a.m. the next day. So although I wasn't dead, I wasn't alive for much of the day. And then those 6 hours I was awake, I was totally freaking out of it. I felt nothing because of all the painkillers. So I did that for a month. And to finally get to your question of like the realization, I realized in that moment that Steve and Matt weren't coming back, excuse me, and that nothing I could do could change that. And, the yelling at God and the conversation I was having is like, why did you leave me? Like, in the depression. So the grief of losing Steve and Matt was about all I could bear. The guilt of being the only survivor was soul crushing. So I had the grief you would expect of losing your two best friends, but the guilt of like, imagine your two best friends, whoever they are, and imagine getting a call that they had passed today. You'd be ruined for a long time. Yeah. But being in the accidents with them, Steve was also ejected out of the car. He was also airlifted in the helicopter. He was also in the same operating room right next to me, but I survived. He didn't. Like, I fell in this mine shaft with Matt. I climbed out. He didn't. Like, dude, it was brutal. And so pills and alcohol is how I decided to feel sorry about myself and deal with that. And I realized in that moment that although I'd been yelling at God, like, it would have been easier for you to have just taken me and left them. How come you didn't pick one of them to have to live? I looked at living as like a chore, as like a negative thing. Like, how come I couldn't have easily just been killed in an instant and not have to deal with this? Why did you leave me to deal with this? Like, that was what I kept dealing. And then I realized what a horrible position, what a horrible view that I'm complaining about being given life a second and third time. And that I'm yelling at God that it would have just been easier to kill me, and that Steve and Matt would have done anything for the time that I had been given that I didn't ask for, but I'd been given anyway. And that the only way that I was going to be able to process this grief was to do way more with my life than I ever thought I would have, and to not go back to firefighting, but to do something bigger. And at the moment, I didn't know what it would be, to then honor their lives with whatever time I had left, to, instead of being a victim, to use that pain as a motivator to do big things in the world. And so that was the realization. I'll never forget it. It was in the afternoon, December 18th, 2004. I had just taken a handful of whatever pills I had, and I was just about to drink my alcohol and knock myself out. And I realized, like, I can't do that anymore. So flushed the pills, didn't drink alcohol for 2.5 straight years after that. Just like completely stopped everything and rebuilt my life one piece at a time. I became a realtor the next March. So just to get real specific on the timeline, lost Steve in September, lost Matt in November, decided in December to stop being, a victim and to start doing positivity, became a real estate agent in March, started my real estate investment company in June. So when I started my investment company, it was 9 months after my accident, my first accident, 7 months after my second. And that was it, bro. And so what fuels me, in addition to just being naturally ambitious and driven, is I personally, in a healthy way, carry the responsibility of doing enough with my life to count for the three of us. Because I'm a Christian, I believe that when I die, I'm going to be in heaven. And I respect your audience's religious viewpoints or lack thereof. That's mine. That's what I choose. And so when I die, I do believe I'll be in heaven. I do believe I'll see Steve and Matt again. And I want to be able to say, guys, I don't know why I got the time that you didn't, but I made it count. And I felt sorry for myself for about a month, but then the whole rest of my life I dedicated to purpose. And I did it this big so that we can all share in that, because I would have never lived this life without you. So I think they get credit for it. And I want to be face to face with my creator and point back down at my life and say, I used every ability, every talent, every opportunity. I kept nothing for myself. I laid it all down there. And longer answer than you were probably looking for, but that was the moment of realization for me that these two tragic accidents, they were going to define me, but in a very different way than I was letting them initially. And that real estate essentially became the vehicle to fund the mission. And so, I do a ton of humanitarian work. We can talk about that if you're interested, but that's it, bro. That was what took me from being a $42,000 a year city employee as a firefighter to, having made millions and millions of dollars in my businesses now. Praise God for that. And then, as you know, with the Thrive brand, not just making the money, but make money matter by impacting others through the resources I've been blessed with. So that's like my whole life thesis there, bro.
That is powerful, man. I really do appreciate you sharing that. Cause I think that, a lot of people go through their own struggles. I went through a different struggle with my mom passing away at a young age for me. And the same thing, I went through kind of a similar, somewhat similar experience where it's like, you're like, why is this happening? What, and you could go to a deep, dark place and sounds like you did for a while.
Oh yeah.
Looking at that silver lining of saying, hey, this experience taught me so much. And it made me realize that your time on this earth is limited.
Right.
That's the only thing you can't get back. And
Totally.
so I was like, well, how can I make my mom proud? Just like you're trying with Steve and Matt to really fulfill their purpose as well as your own.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So,
Yeah. And someone could say, oh, Cole, that's unhealthy. Like, you shouldn't carry the burden of, screw all that. It's healthy. I love it. And, I'm doing things. I'm building schools in Africa and I'm naming them after Steve and Matt. I'm building water wells and naming them after Steve and Matt. Like, for me, it is healthy. It's just drive. And it's honoring their lives. They were given 21 years for who knows why. God and I, although I believe in God and I moved on, because of course, immediately after the accident, I'm blaming God for everything. Why didn't you give us a flat tire, or why? So essentially what happened is we were in a car's blind spot that didn't see us. So they turned into our lane and made contact with us. Like, God, why didn't you make that car just be 4 feet in front of us so that it would have cut us off and we would have hit the brakes, like yelling at God about everything. So whatever, I decided to accept it. And, we're going to have a conversation, God and I, about like, how does any of this all make sense? But through faith, I've just decided, like, I can't choose the cards that are dealt to me, but I can choose to fold or play. And I'm playing it with everything I've got.
Yeah, you're playing it all out, man.
Thanks, bro.
I love it. And it shows in your work. I mean, if anybody's followed Cole, you'll see that, his Thrive conference, his Thrive community, his Thrive tribe, this is more than just a business to Cole and your wife and your family. Like you're building something that is more like a mantra or mindset or, a way of life.
Right. Yeah. Well, I agree with that, dude. And, I don't take any more credit than I should, other than I was in a bad spot. I tried to make good out of it. And all of us have our own stories. Like, sometimes I'll share that story from stage, and then people in the audience will approach me and share stories that are insane. A guy, this is a little graphic, but when he was like 11 years old, walking in the kitchen to see his dad murder his mom in front of him, and then loading he and his brothers into their car, and then his dad trying to kill the whole family in the car by crashing into an underpass like thing at a high speed. And just like there's people's stories out there that are way gnarlier than mine. And so for any of you out there that have any story, and then by the way, the circumstance, it could have just been a divorce for you, but the way that the relationship ending impacted you in a way that's even greater than me losing friends. Because we each are our own human beings, and
Right.
what might not be a big deal to somebody, although divorce is a big deal, but a big deal to something might be monumental or catastrophic to somebody else. And so what I'm getting at is we all have our own stories. Many of us would have written our stories differently than they were written. I don't know anybody that wouldn't have changed a few things in a couple of the chapters of their book, their life story. But it is what it is. And what we do control is what we choose to let it mean and what we do with it. We can let it mean that we're victims and God hates on us and he's pissing down on us from heaven. Or we could say, there are a lot of questions that we'll have to wait to get answers on, but I can use crappy circumstances to create an unreal drive and motivation that will make me a multi-millionaire and change hundreds of thousands of lives. That's our decision of how we want to process it and what we want it to mean about us and what we're going to allow it to do to us or for us. We just recently lost Sean Stevenson, who's known as the 3-foot giant, who wrote a book, Get Off Your Butt, and a bunch of others. Amazing guy. He has a horrible disease, or had, I should say, a horrible disease called osteogenesis imperfecta, which is brittle bone disease. And prior to puberty, literally just sneezing, he would break ribs. Luckily, after puberty, his bones were a little stronger. Long story short, about 6 weeks ago, he passed away from just bonking his head, just a little head injury. He ended up hemorrhaging and losing his life. And his last words were to his wife, who was then shared and went viral over social media. You might have seen this. He said, "This didn't happen to me. This happened for me." And like, for those to be your dying words as a early 40s-year-old man who's lived your entire life since birth in pain, being crippled. And for any of your audience who hasn't heard of Sean Stevenson, look him up. The guy is awesome. Tony Robbins is the one that named him the 3-foot giant. He's super famous, super rad. And literally, as of recording this podcast, just 6 weeks ago, we lost him to something as simple as bonking his head. And his last words as he went into surgery, where he then, through complications, passed, were, hey, to his wife, "Don't worry, this didn't happen to me. This happened for me." What a powerful way to go out. And so for any of us, I know that we're probably supposed to talk about real estate, and we'll get there in a second, but for whoever, you're at the gym right now running, or you're driving to work, or wherever you're consuming this content right now, like, something's happening in your life or has happened. And I challenge you, like Sean, to not think of things happening to you, but happening for you. And by just repositioning that in your mind, then asking the question, what can I now do with this? If this didn't happen to me, it happened for me. What can I do with this? And I promise you, something beautiful can happen. Maybe not making millions of dollars, but maybe it's just having conversations with other people who are in the same spot, of being there, not as someone who wants to be empathetic, but somebody who knows what it feels like to lose a child, if that's your circumstance, or to go through divorce or bankruptcy, or whatever it is that's absolutely tearing you up. I feel like I'm going Tony Robbins on you right now, but like, whatever that is, maybe it's just so that you can now connect in a deeper way than any of us who have never personally experienced it. And that happened to you so that you can be there to help others going through it survive.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you can tell I'm a little passionate about that.
Dude, I love that you dove into that, because it's great timing, because I literally, my fiance and I just came from 4 days with Tony Robbins.
Oh, cool. You did Miami UPW?
Yep.
I had about 800 friends there, so I know all about it.
Yeah. So that was really the whole mindset for the whole weekend was, life happens for you, not to you. And you are the controller of your own universe and the controller of your own destiny. And we each have a choice every day that we wake up, whether or not we want to look at this as a positive, beautiful life that we get to live, get the privilege to live, or if, woe is me, and and everything's against me and the world's against me. That's a choice you have to make in your mind first, and that's where it starts. And that literally is a domino effect for everything else in your life.
Right. Right on. Right on, man. So hopefully that meant something to somebody out there listening to this right now. But and then the last bit of advice for anybody who's in something that sucks is time and tears. Coming to the realization the moment after something happened that you can make good out of it. All of us got to grieve. I went through 30 days of hell, and I still miss Steve and Matt 15 years later. Wow, I just realized, holy cow, the anniversary of Matt is in 2 days. That's crazy. So exactly 15 years ago, almost to the day, and I still miss them. But
yeah.
So time and tears. Give yourself some time, and then at that point, stop being a victim, get up, and do something with it. Because being crippled to grief, that's no way to live life.
So going through your story and how you've grown into this real estate business, conferences, masterminds, becoming really a thought leader and an influencer, how has your, I guess, mindset changed about business throughout, like from where you started versus where you are now?
Yeah. So I illustrate that actually through quadrants, which is what eventually created Thrive. But I've been in 4 distinct seasons in my life. And so explain the quadrants verbally is basically impossible. Let me just explain the 4 seasons. I started business thinking that it was just to make money. And then what you did with the money, was your call at that point. And I call that the earning quadrant. That's where the world tells you you're going to be happy. The more money you have, more stuff you have, the happier you'll be. But there are a lot of people with a lot of money and a lot of stuff who aren't happy. So obviously it's not just having monetary possessions and financial liquidity that makes happiness. It's what you do with it. But so that's where I started, was just the pursuit of making money. I still obviously want to honor Steve and Matt, but for me, the evolution of business was, hey, I'm a realtor. I got to make money. And that's the whole point. What I do with my personal life is different, but business is just to make money. Then I ended up 2008 entering the Great Recession. And as a real estate investor who had only been doing it for 2.5 years and quite honestly had no education, I just got started at the right place, right time. In 2005, when I started my business, bro, dude, I don't know if you remember the lending climate back then, but stated income, stated assets, 100% financing. My dad and I would buy a house, take a nap, and already get an offer 80 grand more than we just paid for it before we'd even freaking raked the leaves off the grass. And any human being that had a beating heart in their chest could qualify for the financing. It's like, dude, subprime, all that. If you had a heartbeat, you could get 100% financing off stated income, stated asset. And if you couldn't afford the house, don't worry about it. We'll put you in a 3-year arm where it's now cheaper than your rent used to be. And oh yeah, you're going to foreclose in 2 years and cause a recession, but nobody cares. So my dad and I, not knowing that technically I can't say we were part of the problem, but selling houses was easy, bro, because anyone that wanted it could buy it, regardless if they should or not. And so we made stupid amount of money. And then 2008 came, we were in a recession, and I realized, oh my gosh, you actually need to know how to invest in real estate. You actually need to understand economic cycles, real estate financing, creative acquisitions, all of that stuff. So I slowly started hemorrhaging halfway through 2008, where I was making, even though I was working 7 days a week, I was making less than my overhead. And I got all the way to late winter, early spring of 2010. And finally enough was enough. And I quit my company. I resigned. I told my dad, I'm out, dude. And my girlfriend ends up breaking up with me a few months later on Cinco de Mayo, which is just un-American, by the way, to dump me on a Mexican holiday. But I will tell you that she's now my wife. So I got her back. Thank you very much. But
Nice.
So my now wife, who back then was my girlfriend, she dumps me, unrelated to business. Actually, now that I told the Steve and Matt story, it's because of that. She wanted to move our relationship to the next level. And I was still dealing with the losses of Steve and Matt, although it had happened years earlier. I was convinced at that point of my life that anyone I loved would die. So although I was monogamous and completely committed to her, I always kept her like an arm's length distance, because I was like, dude, if I fall head over heels in love with her, she's going to die. I know it. And I just can't have that happen again. And she respected and understood that. But then after 2 years, she's like, listen, I get it, but like, I need to move forward with you or move away. And I was like, listen, I can't move forward. So she dumped me. It sucked. So then I end up in Mexico, bro. as a missionary. I was like, okay, my business failed. I've got like pennies left, not a lot. My girlfriend dumped me. I'm out. And I moved to Mexico and I became a missionary, and I worked with an existing nonprofit based down there that was building houses for homeless families. And I lived off what little bit of savings I had left, and I made it down there 7 months. And it was in that 7-month season that I went into the giving quadrant. Sorry, I skipped a quadrant. The surviving quadrant was where I was from 2008 to 2010, literally just doing anything I could to survive. So back to your original question, what I then thought business was for was just to survive. Like literally, oh my gosh, I've got to flip a house, or I got to do something I got to wholesale a property. I got to do something because I got rent coming up and I overdraft. So that's the survivor quadrant. Then I moved to what's called the giving quadrant. And this is where missionaries like I was at the time, and churches and NGOs exist, where they're all about impact, but make no money. I was down there living off of my savings, what little bit of savings I had left, which went a very long way in Mexico where I was living. I mean, I was living off $50 a week maybe, because my rent was $80 a month because I lived in a 2-bedroom, 1 bath with 3 Mexicans. So it was me, one of my best friends now, Walter, and then 2 other Mexican guys, because we were living in Mexico. So they're Mexican nationals. I was the gringo. But so anyway, I'm down there, and that's where my final realization of what business should be came from. I was considering going back to America and going to speak at different churches, and friends that I had who had money, guys like you, and saying, hey, I'm down there building houses for homeless families. I ended up starting an orphanage down there as well, which I still have to this day. And I can't afford to do this. So why don't you send me a couple $100 a month so you can keep focusing on building your business, Evan, and getting rich in real estate, but just know that you're helping kids down there by supporting me. And as I started thinking about what that conversation would sound like, pitching you over coffee to just send me money out of the charity of your heart, the entrepreneur in me is like, this is a hard sale. Like, to literally just ask people to give me money, it'd be way easier to just sell you something. So then the entrepreneur is like, okay, what if I built businesses, but only picked products and industries that had enough margin where I'd be selling a product or service, but then that profit would then fund my orphanage, and that profit would then fund my missions work. And then I started thinking about it, and I'll expedite the process. I eventually coined the phrase, make money matter. And I said, I'm going to go back to America, and I'm going to not become a missionary. I'm actually going to start my businesses back up and start new businesses. And I'm going to make more money than I ever have. I didn't know how yet at the time, but I just knew I was going to. And instead of just making money, I'm going to make money matter, because I'm going to get rich, but not for what most people do with money. I'm going to get rich because I'm going to change the world with my money. And that was it. And then that's the final quadrant, which we call the thriving quadrant, where now you're making more money than you ever have, but you're making an impact. And I coined the term for-purpose business because I wasn't running a nonprofit, but I wasn't running a traditional for-profit where I was just getting rich for myself. I was running businesses that were changing the world simultaneously, making social impact. Like Tom's Shoes is probably the most famous, biggest example of a company that does that, where for every pair of shoes they sold, they gave a pair away. And it wasn't Blake Mikowski, the founder, just being charitable. It was in their business model that as they sold shoes, they gave back. And so for me personally, that was what I did. And I started that in 2011. So I moved to Mexico 2010, came back 2011, started those businesses up, crushed it. And eventually I got enough attention and enough people interviewing me and things like that, that I realized that entrepreneurs are thirsty for doing more than just make money. There's a part of our souls that are wired to impact. Tony Robbins talks about 6 human needs. Speaking of Tony Robbins, like this isn't a new conversation. Like we throughout humanity know that we have to be significant. We have to do things of substance. We can't just pay bills and then die. And for those that are living that life, that's why they're filled with depression and things like that. So
right.
back to this, I started this and I was getting blown up from social media. People being like, teach me how to do this. Teach me how to do this. So then we said, screw it. We created our conference you mentioned earlier, which was supposed to just be a one-off. It was called Thrive. It's still called Thrive. And it was supposed to just be a one-off event. Like, okay, you're all hitting me up on social media. Let's do it. And then it's since gone on for the last 6 years. And so, so that's the evolution of business. Is it's not just to make money, but you also shouldn't just be a missionary or start a nonprofit, because although your intentions are amazing, your economics are crappy. Like, do you realize that if people stopped donating to charities, how screwed up the world would be? Because the charities out there, many of them are making massive impacts of women and children who are victims of human trafficking, clean water projects in Africa, schools, homelessness, orphanages, like all of the work, deforestation, like the rainforest, all of the stuff that nonprofits are aiding in would just go away overnight if people stop just donating. And so I'm like, why do we even have nonprofits? Why don't the businesses who have all the money just take care of the world's needs? Why do the businesses then have to give money to a new organization, and that new organization goes out there and does something? Why don't the businesses just solve the social needs of the world? And that's a for-purpose business, and that is what I believe business is for. So maybe you thought that'd be a quick answer. Here we are 20 minutes later, but
Well,
that's
I
it.
love that, because that's exactly what, that's why we started Monumental, was to help people on their journey of actually making massive impact, monumental impact in the world, and using business and multifamily investing as a vehicle to get to that impact. So I'm glad you touched on that. And that's really, that's what I stand for in my work. My big thing is real estate for impact. Just like you saying, make money matter, and for purpose business. That's exactly what we stand for. Our company, Holiday Ventures, we're all about, like, a core belief of our business comes down to resident empowerment and building workforce affordable housing, not just luxury, but actually building quality for residents that actually need help and can't afford a good quality place to call home. And then not only that, but then empowering them and taking them up to that next level of giving them the right mindset, exactly what we're talking about here, helping them get into the right headspace where they're taking charge of their life and taking it to the next level. So I'm loving everything about that. Make money matter, man.
Right on. Well, sounds like we're up to the same thing then, man, because that's it. And but then I said earlier, people say money can't buy happiness. I actually think money can buy happiness. Does money make people happy? No, of course. Having money, whether my account is at zero or a gazillion dollars, that isn't going to be happiness. What I do with my gazillion dollars, absolutely. And for any of you out there listening to this that think I'm crazy, go take your money and go to wherever there's homeless people in your community. Go feed a hungry homeless child and tell me you feel worse by using your money to buy them food. A lot of people judge the homeless and say, I'm not going to give them money. They're going to go buy drugs. Cool. Then just give them food so you know what they're doing with it. And if you can honestly say that you took your money and took time out of your day to then go buy food to nourish someone who is starving and you feel worse, you're just broken and you've got way bigger problems. But I'm going to guess that you're going to feel better, like happy, like, oh my gosh, you just bought your happiness. So when people say money can't buy happiness, I always say you're just shopping in the wrong area. I buy happiness all the time. Money doesn't make happiness, but it sure as hell can buy it if you're investing it in the right places, like people, etc.
Yeah, I love that. So going back to Thrive Conference, where did you, I guess, start off with, like, the idea, the motion behind it, and then being like, all right, we're doing this and we're making it happen. And then also going from, you said you were just going to do it one time to now you're doing it annually, right? How did that progress?
Yeah. So again, the origin was just the few podcasts that I got invited on. So as I was in the business world, my network started expanding like it does for any of us, whatever community you're in. So I'm in the entrepreneurial community. And then obviously I came across people like you who have podcasts. So they're like, hey, will you do a podcast? And I remember I was like, what the heck is a podcast? Like, whenever I miss church on Sunday, my mom's always like, oh, the message was great. Go listen to the podcast. I was like, I didn't even know it was anything other than something my church did, right? So I kept getting asked to be guests. And so I started saying yes. And the majority of those conversations was around what we've been talking about, of course. And then the listeners started finding me on social media and just blowing me up of like, dude, I want more of this. So honestly, the creation of Thrive One was just being like, I literally have like 800 DMs from people from all over the world that say they want this. Let's do an event. And 440 people showed up to the very first Thrive. And because of the messaging of what we were doing, we had Gary Vaynerchuk come. We had Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank. Like, we had the most incredible speaker lineup of any event I've ever seen ever. And we do every year, by the way. And so it was a one-off event. We did it. And at the end of those 3 days of training people out in Las Vegas, how to not just make money by bringing in guys like Gary and Robert to teach you how to scale and grow your business and crush it, but how to make money matter with the for-purpose element. Sure enough, at the end of 3 days, people were coming up to us saying it was the best conference they'd ever attended. They can't wait to come next year. There were literally people that were suicidal that came to that event and said they now have found purpose to live. And my wife and I just looked at each other, we're like, oh, it gets me emotional still this day. And we're like, holy cow, like, what did we do? And we were like, well, I guess we'll do it one more time, I guess. So then we did Thrive #2 as a one-off again. We're like, we're only going to do this once more. And we did Thrive #2, and almost 700 people showed up to that one. And it was the same thing. People were like, my life will never be the same. So then we're like, screw it. Let's just keep doing this as long as people show up. And now thousands of people come to this conference every single year. And if you can name them as far as a business influencer, they've been to Thrive, from Ed Milet to Andy Frisella to, we already talked about Gary Vee, to Grant Cardone's been there multiple years. I mean, freaking Eric Thomas, Les Brown, Jack Canfield, author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, John, like, you name it, they've been there. So that's the whole point, is to gather entrepreneurs who want to make stupid amounts of money, but not for the reasons the world tells you to just go and consume, but to live your dream life guilt-free. I mean, for those of you that are catching the video, you probably noticed there's a popcorn machine and it says movie. I'm sitting in my own movie theater at my house. So I'm living in my dream home. All my dream cars are out there in the driveway in the garages, but I live my dream life guilt-free because those are just byproducts of my activity. My purpose is impact. And because we're doing well, we end up living this life, but again, completely guilt-free, not in a guilty way, because I know the day that I went and bought my last car, the day before that, we led 72 volunteers to go do a homeless outreach project in Los Angeles. Like, literally on Thursday, we did a homeless reach in Los Angeles, and 8 a.m. Friday, I picked up my next car. And so that healthy balance of give and then enjoying life is what I think.
That's powerful, man. I think everybody listening is aspiring to that. And part of that tribe of, giving and enjoying, and just, enjoying the process and enjoying life.
Totally. There's nothing wrong with enjoying it, but just don't only do that. I mean, how sad would your funeral be if that's all you did? And people are like, well, you had a lot of cool cars, took really great vacations, and sure had a big house. And that's like it. That's all your life represented, was working your ass off to buy stuff. How sad would your funeral be? Well, he always picked up the bill at dinner. Nice guy. Like, okay, cool. All of that should be said, but as like an afterthought of, this guy fed me. When I lost my job and was going to have to tell my children we weren't even going to have a Christmas tree, much less Christmas, this person quietly, just the two of us, funded Christmas so that my kids could have a tree on Christmas morning. Like, those are the types of conversations. And then, it gets me emotional, but then somebody else fighting for the microphone saying, oh yeah, well, that happened to me, but it was Thanksgiving and they completely funded the Christmas or Thanksgiving meal. Oh yeah, well, that's not, mine's even better. For me, I was going to go bankrupt and he paid my mortgage for 6 months. Like, all of these things that my wife calls deposits in heaven that we share with nobody. I want people at my funeral to be fighting over the microphone to talk about the meaningful impact I made in their lives. And that's what makes me matter is.
I love that. That's amazing. So speaking of your wife, Sanja, I know you guys work pretty closely together, and then she's even part of the Thrive movement. And so what is that like as far as you all working together hand in hand, mixing business with family?
So she is no longer a part of the Thrive movement. She runs it. She is actually the person running it. So that's been an evolution. I thought of it and I did Thrive #1 all by myself. I think she, like 3 weeks before the event, was like, what's all this Thrive stuff you keep talking about? And like helped me at the last second, print the name badges and stuff, the small details. Fast forward, and like, I have very little to do with the operations anymore of Thrive. I'm about finding the right speakers. For instance, the reason that I told you that we have to end exactly when we end is right after this, I've got a Zoom call with 2 of the Thrive speakers this year to lock that down. So nice. Long story short, my wife completely runs this now. So for any of you who have been to Thrive the last 2 years or coming this year, what you experience, she gets the credit, because I'm just an actor in her show now, basically. But working with her is incredible and incredibly challenging. I love the proximity. I'm with my wife 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 300 days a year, probably, right? I
Yeah.
traveled it without her. Like, for instance, I just got back from Puerto Rico and she didn't come on that trip. So I'm with my wife way more than most people, and that works for us. So I know other couples that are like, I could never be around my spouse that much. That works for us. Excuse me. Where we have challenges is it'll be quote unquote date night. And on date night, all we're doing is talking business. And we have to catch ourselves and be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We need to remember that there's an us outside of business. Let's talk about the kids. Let's talk about, how are your friendships with your girlfriends going? How are mine with my dudes? Like, let's have real conversation and not just be talking about scaling and marketing and cogs and all that stuff. And so that's the challenge, is remembering that we need to invest just as hard into our marriage as we do our businesses, and catching ourselves and stopping talking about business and creating space for us to just do what normal married people do. Like, freaking, I don't know, even gossip. Like, oh my gosh, did you hear so-and-so are getting a divorce? How sad is that? Like, just normal conversations. And that's the challenge. And the way that we get through that is we do what we call audits. We audit every area of our business. And so we decided that we need to audit our marriage too. This is a new thing. My wife and I have been together for 11 years now, married for 8. And we just started doing audits maybe 2 years ago. So this is a new thing where, we audit our marketing. How's our ad spend? How are our ROAS? We how's our employees? Like, we audit everything. Is everyone doing what they should be doing? Should someone be getting paid more, or should someone no longer be a part of the company? Like, everything gets audited, and then there's like the marriage is the afterthought. So we audit our marriage as well. How many times were the two of us alone? As I told you in the beginning of this, or actually before we pressed record, there's probably 13 people in my house right now. And there are usually anywhere between 2 and 15 people 6 days a week here, because I have a attached part of my house on the far side where I run my company, where my employees can come and go. And so, like, auditing, when's the last time we were alone? Just the two of us, without even our kids, they were with like a grandparent or something. And when's the last time we did an activity together? Like, not just eat, but we went surf. Like, she and I surf together. Or we also skate. Like, when's the last time we went skateboarding? When's the last time we went surfing? When's the last time we went on a hike? Like, when's the last time we did an activity? And doing those types of audits has completely, I think, saved our marriage. We weren't fighting, but I could totally see at a decade, and we would have like been two ships in the night, where we would have said, hey, we don't remember when, but we kind of fell out of love, and we're amicable. It would have been like those couples you see who have divorced and remarried, who said, oh, we just fell out of love. There wasn't an affair. There wasn't a big blowout. We just kind of fell out of love and found new people. So now we co-parent and everything's good. I think that for those types of relationships, I can't say this universally across the board, but if there wasn't an incident where like there was an affair or something, it was just like, oh, we fell out of love. Man, if you had been auditing it, you would have seen that early enough to do something about it. Love isn't a feeling, it's an action. And you have to love your spouse. And so we audit, are we loving each other right now, or just working together? And so I think we saved our marriage. Maybe on our 15-year anniversary, we would have been at that dinner being like, why are we still married? Like, why, we don't really even have anything in common anymore.
I love that, auditing your marriage just like you're auditing your business. It's so true. I mean, your relationships need work too, and they need tweaking, and it's a constant process. So I love that. And I'm same way with myself and Jeanette. It's like constantly thinking about business, constantly talking. So it's like you have to take that time away and say, hey, let's go for a hike, or let's do something outside of business.
Right.
Well, let's quickly jump into monumental questions. What does success mean to you? So
I think, in a nutshell, of everything we just discussed, summarizing it down into a sentence or two, like, success to me is passionately loving the 3 women in my life, my wife and my 2 daughters, and as a family, passionately loving everybody, regardless of who they pray to, what they look like, or who they love. And that just leading a life of service, of serving our clients, customers, and the world. And at the end of measuring what we took to what we gave, that we gave more than we took, and we left everything we touched better than we started. For me, business is the vehicle that allows that to happen, but that's the point. So that's success to me.
Yeah, I love it. What about daily habits or morning rituals?
So because I run 4 different businesses, each day is always different, and I like it that way. But from the moment I wake up till 9:30 is always the same. And it starts with, usually I wake up first and I actually come to a movie theater of all places, and I'll read or I'll do something. And then when my little girls wake up, I jump back into my bed, and all four of us, my wife and my two babies, we spend the first half an hour together. Then we all eat breakfast together, always together. My cell phone, I'm not touching it. And then if it's a school day, we all take my 6-year-old to school. My 3-year-old hasn't started yet, but we all take my 6-year-old to school as a whole family together every day, non-negotiable. That's done by 7:45. And then I go to the gym every day from 8 to 9, unless something crazy is happening like today, and then I'm going to go from 1 to 2. I get home from the gym at 9:15. At 9:30, we have a company meeting, a long one on Mondays, or a quick touch gloves every other day. And at the conclusion of that meeting, every day is different. But that morning, especially the family time, anchors me for the whole day, and nothing changes that. It's do not talk to me or touch my schedule or ask me for anything before 9:15 a.m.
Yeah, that's blocked out. I love it.
Yep, every day, always.
So finally, what is your favorite book or book you're currently reading?
Book I'm currently reading is Traction by Gino, something with a B.
Wickman.
It's good so far. Favorite book in general, I'll say, as far as recommending to people, there's like 10, but I'll go with How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Everyone always says Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, and all that, but I really am a huge fan of How to Win Friends and Influence People by Carnegie.
Yeah, and Traction is something I recommend everybody too, because it's powerful to have that operating system for your business.
Well, I'm 2 chapters in, so far so good. But that's what I'm currently reading.
Well, Cole, I really appreciate it. I feel like we could go on and on. This was phenomenal, honestly, for me as well as our Monumental listeners. So where can our Monumental listeners find you and find more information about Thrive Conference?
Yep. So for Thrive, it's attendthrive.com. Super simple. Attend, like you're going to attendthrive.com. And then as far as finding me, just at Cole Hatter on all social media, ColeHatter. So at Cole Hatter, if you want to hit me up. Instagram's really the only one I'm using at this point. And then for Thrive, attendthrive.com.
Guys, take Cole up on that. Seriously, phenomenal value he's adding. Follow him on social media, follow him on Instagram. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure share it on social media, tag Cole, tag me, let us know you're listening, let us know you're enjoying it. And guys, with that, have a monumental day.